If you have been active in the aim training community at any point over the past 4 years or so, something like this should be pretty familiar to you. These are the voltaic benchmarks, and going back as far as I can remember, these have been considered the default way to test your skill when training. Over time, they have taken on a bit of a different role though, with the benchmarks themselves becoming the training tool, not just something to test your skill with. I imagine a lot of you are probably expecting me to say something about how awful that is and how grinding the benchmarks is bad for improvement, and it certainly can be, but I don't think it has to be. The voltaic benchmarks have continued to be iterated upon over the years, but there was never any question about what they were being designed to do. They were to test aiming skill in a way that paints the most complete picture possible, something that they have become very good at. Other benchmarks have been made over the years too, but in my experience, most of them are either structurally identical to voltaic's benchmarks or hyper-focused on a specific category. And that's not to say that all of these are bad or anything, but I wanted to try something a little different. These are the viscose benchmarks, and the idea they started from was, what if a benchmark was designed to be a training tool? My goal was to essentially trick people into playing scenarios that are good for practice instead of just good for evaluating your own skill level. What this means is that they might not be as consistent as voltaic's benchmarks or cover as many areas of aim, but instead they focus on the scenarios and categories that I have found the most useful to my own personal aim development no matter the game I'm playing. The score targets are slapped on as a motivator, but they aren't really the point. The goal here instead is to develop strong fundamentals and good technique, which will transfer over to any game. You can play other game-specific training methods on top of using these to benchmark if you'd like to as well, but I have tried to cover everything here. If you want to give them a try now, there's a link to the spreadsheet in the description. Go onto File, make a copy, and you're good to go. But I want to address how these actually differ from voltaic's benchmarks and how do those differences better facilitate improving your technique. I think the biggest factor is the categorization of scenarios. Here are voltaic's, focusing primarily on the type of aim involved with even numbers of scenarios for each type. The thing is though, the main 3 types of aim are not equally important for in-game translation, and some very important scenario types like Pokeball are entirely absent here, since they don't really fit into any of these categories. Plus, in my opinion, target switching is fairly overrepresented. What I've done instead is distribute the scenarios unevenly based on what I have personally found the most useful for in-game translation, and split those scenarios into more technique-focused categories. So instead of categorizing tasks based on what they are, I group them based on what they do. There is no target switching subcategory anymore. Those scenarios all fall under flicking technique and are subdivided into which area of your flicks they focus on. Same with control tracking being split into which muscle group the scenario targets. This both gives you an idea of how to approach each scenario as well as what area you're weak at if you are struggling with specific ones. For example, a lower relative score on the fingertip subcategory in control tracking doesn't just tell you general info like work on tracking. It is very specifically a weakness with fine control over small movements, either with your fingertips or wrist, depending on grip and playstyle. And while I have designed the benchmarks in a way where grinding the scenarios you are weak at will help you address those weaknesses, if you want to vary your practice more, you can pick out extra scenarios to help isolate the issue. How I like to do this is just by searching for the name of the base scenario to find variants. For example, Clover Raw Control. Typing that in brings up heaps of versions of the scenario with slight variations like slower, faster, larger, adding blinks, and each change will help work on different things. You can also check out other benchmarks on this website that have more narrow focuses than mine, or look through voltaic's recommended scenario list, or just playlists other people have made to find scenarios that will help you improve at the areas you're weakest in. About playlists though, I've heard that a lot of people play these benchmarks as if they were one, and this isn't something I recommend personally. You can if you'd like to, and I'm sure it is still beneficial, but in my opinion, the value in benchmarks is that they make it easy for you to motivate yourself to push yourself to improve category by category. How I approach every task is a test of optimization. What am I doing wrong from a technique perspective that this scenario is forcing me to improve at? The most recent example for me was Pasu. I wasn't leading my shots properly, and trying to push my score further forced me to improve my technique. For me, this is what makes benchmarks better than playlists, and why I chose to make this list of scenarios into one instead of just posting it as a playlist. By encouraging you to look at your score on each scenario, set a goal for yourself, and figure out what is preventing you technique-wise from reaching it is why I think benchmarks have become such a good tool to improve. It prevents you from autopiloting and forces you to actively analyze your own improvement, which is exactly what I wanted when making these, and dictated every decision from subcategory names to rank difficulty. On that note, the most common question I've been asked about this benchmark is, why is X rank so hard if it is on the easier benchmarks? A lot of people have told me that fuchsia is way harder than wool, even though fuchsia is classified as medium and wool is hard, and they are right. This is an intentional design change from Voltaic, and actually something I suggested to them during the development of Season 5. I think the best way to think of it is that these terms, easier, medium, and hard, represent the difficulty of the scenarios included in the benchmarks, not the skill required for any given rank on those benchmarks. There will be players who I would consider advanced who can't get to the top rank on the medium scenarios here, and that isn't just to make these benchmarks really hard for no reason. The Voltaic benchmarks have had a bit of a problem where the jumps between difficulties is so drastic that it feels completely impossible to broach for a lot of people. When trying to go from Master to Grandmaster, you need to not only get a better score, but get that score on a significantly harder scenario. I think this is why Master became cited as the cutoff point for when aim trainers lose their value, even though this isn't true in my opinion. It's just that the time investment required per rank grows so much after this point, partially because you have to get those scores on increasingly difficult scenarios. What I've done to try and alleviate this issue is to have roughly 2 ranks of overlap for each difficulty. So ordering the ranks in terms of how hard they're supposed to be would look something like this. This means that while someone is climbing to the higher ranks on the medium scenarios, for example, they can try out the harder ones and still have scores to shoot for there. In my opinion, less challenging scenarios always have their place when aim training, no matter how good you get. I think of easier scenarios as refinement of your technique and harder scenarios as a stress test of that technique. You really should be playing both simultaneously, and this isn't something that conventional benchmarks encourage. Once you're done with intermediate on Voltaic, you move on to advanced. Whereas here, it's highly encouraged to keep playing the set of benchmarks below the highest set you can get scores on. I'm not too far off Silk Complete on these, and I still get a lot of value from playing the medium difficulty scenarios. This is also a part of the reason why there are so many ranks here, but not the only reason. Another goal I had with these was to make starting out on them more approachable than Voltaic. I want most people who are brand new to aim training to be able to get a rank in a couple of tries. This means that there are a lot more ranks on the easier scenarios than Voltaic has, and since medium overlaps with the easier and harder scenarios, there is a bunch of ranks there too. As for the ranks themselves, I have strayed away from Voltaic's contemporary energy system and went back to their old system of requiring 1 score per subcategory to get a rank. My reasoning for this is twofold. Making people play a wider range of scenarios will naturally lead to them becoming more well-rounded, and it also allows the individual score targets to be lower for each. Since you can get a rank in Voltaic with only 3 to 4 scores in that rank total, the individual scores are going to be a grind. Whereas here, you need at least 14 scores, meaning even if I want Fuchsia to be equal to Voltaic Nova as a rank, the Fuchsia score targets can be much more reachable, which I personally find more motivating. I think that's everything I have to say about the benchmarks themselves, but if you'd like to know more about how to play each scenario specifically, I'm working on adding these little notes to each scenario when you click it with the link to a VOD as well as a small write-up. And if you want more information, I should have a video up on my second channel by the time this goes live, talking through similar things with my own and Matthew's gameplay to demonstrate what proper technique looks like for each. Also, thank you so much to Penguify for making the spreadsheet for this. A lot of my stupid ideas like bringing back vaults or having a seemingly random number of scenarios per subcategory would not have worked at all using a benchmark template, and I love the rank names and colour scheme, which are all Pingu's doing. Please show them your support in the comments, and thanks for watching.